Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the opening press conference of the third annual meeting of the Global Future Councils here in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Welcome to you. Thanks for joining us online, as well as here in the room. Of course, it's a packed schedule. This is the first of several public-facing engagements we'll have throughout the day. This is, after all, a brainstorm of experts, but of course we want to share as much knowledge with the outside world as possible, which is why we're grateful to have so many of our friends here in the media to report and to analyse the work that's going on. So the purpose of this one is hopefully an informal illustration of what we hope as an organisation to achieve. Why do we keep coming back to the United Arab Emirates for our Global Future Council meetings? What is the purpose of this meeting within the wider remit of our organisation's mission to improve the state of the world? To do that and to hopefully answer those questions, before we give you the chance to ask your own, are three of my most esteemed colleagues. On my immediate left, Saadia Zahidi is a managing director, member of our managing board and head of our social and economic agenda, the team that recently put out the Global Competitiveness Report, for example. Next to Saadia is Stephan Mergenthaler, head of knowledge networks and analysis. That's the team that organises and manages the Global Future Councils on a year-round basis. Mirek Dusek has been coming to this meeting and coming to this region for many, many years. I'm sure you all know him. He is deputy head now of Geopolitical and Regional Agendas, again, a member of our executive board back in Geneva. They all will have unique and hopefully very distinct points and comments to make. I'm going to start with you, Stephan, as the person that organises this meeting, to tell us a little bit about what your thinking is this year and what you hope to achieve.
Excellent. Thank you, Ollie. It's a great pleasure to be here. And you'll probably ask us, why does it matter that we convene 700 experts in these halls here? And so if you look at the world today, we can say there's been great progress over the past decades. Child mortality has more than halved, extreme poverty has decreased, more people have access to education, information than ever before. But this progress is not inevitable. It doesn't happen by itself. And of course, there's extreme challenges that are the flip side of this progress as well, the environment above all. How can we set ourselves on a path of progress that reverses, in a way, the extreme harm we've done to our planet? How can we overcome some of the inequalities that are set to increase through new technologies as well, or that become to grow in concerns as we enter this phase of new technologies, automation, and so on. And so we urgently need new thinking on how we can shape a new phase of globalization, a new architecture, if you will, that delivers some of the same benefits of progress, but avoids some of these externalities, some of these challenges that we're deeply concerned about. And so these ideas emerge when you bring together experts from various different backgrounds, different perspectives, different sectors, and have them work hard at finding common ground, common solutions. And this is really what we're here to do for the next 2 days. And to give you an example of this, of these kinds of ideas, these solutions that can emerge in settings like this, it was here in Dubai at this meeting that we first started to talk about this idea of the fourth industrial revolution. We saw early signs of emerging technologies, disruptive technologies with potential to greatly improve the state of the world. Of course, also with some concerns of their application. But we tried to find ways of challenging this disruptive potential of technologies for the greatest benefit of society. And we brought together here, again for the first time, in our confines at least, experts at the leading edge of these technologies, experts on blockchain, artificial intelligence, with communities that are working on some of the great public good challenges we face, experts on the environment, on cities and jobs, and so on. And so it was here that we saw the emergence of a new flagship initiative for us at the Forum, the Fourth Industrial Revolution for the Earth, where we're working on solutions that use some of these technologies, blockchain for water management, artificial intelligence for energy supply, and so on. And so it's these types of ideas that are at the intersection of different sectors, of different disciplines that we see have great promise for the world and that we want to see emerge from this meeting. I want to make a final point just about this meeting, because we're convening here 700 experts. We have 38 councils that are working as we speak in the room next door. But we don't want the insights from these councils, from these experts, to be confined to this group. We have actually invested quite heavily and developed a platform that makes all of these insights, the interconnections between these insights, accessible. We launched it publicly here in Dubai last year at this meeting, and I'm pleased to say we have close to 100,000 people who are actively following this and engaged with this online already. I invite you to explore this at wef.ch/knowledge. This year we're actually launching the entire content, all the topics we're covering at the World Economic Forum and beyond in 5 different languages, including in Arabic. So I really invite you to explore this. It's a way of accessing the thinking that comes out of these councils, out of these experts here on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephan. And Mirek, I want to come to you last and maybe provide a wrap-up of the region, our activities within the wider Middle East and North Africa. But Saadia, let's go to you next. Maybe tell us a little bit about your work here. The Centre for New Economy and Society is a new centre within the World Economic Forum. You have 3 new councils this year. And of course, you've been very active in our day-to-day business measuring economic competitiveness. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your work in this area too.
Sure, thank you very much. I think whether it is in this region, in developed parts of the world, in emerging parts of the world, one big question that is on the mind of many is how do we restore the path to socioeconomic mobility? That path used to be fairly simple. You were supposed to get an education and you were supposed to move into a job for life and progress through that job. That path is either wholly broken in certain economies or very uncertain in others. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is spend our time in the Center for New Economy and Society to try to understand what are some of these technological disruptions, what are the things that actually were disruptions a long time ago, but we haven't adapted our structures for them, and create some of the proposals for the adaptation that is required today. We're doing that through the lens of 3 Global Future Councils, one on the new economic agenda, one on the new social contract, and one on the new metrics, the new kind of data and measurements we need to make this happen. And there are 4 specific topics that we're looking at this summit. One is try to understand what are the safety nets we require in the 4th Industrial Revolution. Is it something as radical as universal basic income, or is it something such as universal basic services, or do we need essentially precision safety nets, and how do we use technology to deliver them? Second, what would an investment strategy for job creation look like? So not just thinking about all of the displacement that might occur through technology, but if we were to use the power of this technology and have specific proposals for investment strategies for governments and for the private sector for fostering job creation, what would that look like? Which sectors would we invest in? Third, fundamentally rethinking economic value. We've been relying on essentially price measures. We've been relying on GDP as one proxy for economic value. Are there different ways for thinking about this, and how would we then measure it? What actually constitutes economic value, and should we build in measures of the environment? Should we build in views about social cohesion into what constitutes economic value? And then finally, last, we know that platforms are great at delivering essentially very good services in a very agile and rapid way to their customers, but they can have some negative impact when it comes to workers in some cases, on innovation because of the excessive market concentration. And so how do we deal with that? How do we keep the positive benefits yet at the same time find ways for innovation to continue and to reduce any negative impact on workers? So those are the kinds of questions that are being tackled through these 3 councils.
Thanks, Saadia. And just as a brief aside, some of our most interesting intellectual work at the forum over the past couple of years has been around the future of jobs. I urge you, if you're interested in what happens next when robots start kind of becoming more and more integrated into the workplace, a couple of really interesting papers we've produced this year. Reskilling Revolution, which helps leaders and individuals, members of the public, all of us decide what our next career choice may be, bearing in mind we won't be doing the same thing all our lives, most likely. And the Future of Jobs, a paper that was produced in September, again, offering a prognosis on the kinds of jobs we expect to lose and see displaced, but also the kind of jobs we expect to see created. So highly relevant in this region as well as other parts of the world. Now, Mirek, you've been extremely busy over the past year working to advance entrepreneurism and the fourth industrial revolution in the Middle East and North Africa. Tell us a bit about that.
Stephan mentioned that for the annual meeting in Davos, we're gathered under basically two premises. One, globalization 4.0, so kind of a new global reality. And then what do we do about that? So how do we architect a new future, new collaboration in the future? So it's new context, and how do you adapt to it? I would argue this is so important for the region. How do we are entering a new context in the region, and how does the region own up to it and adapt to it? And what I mean by that are mainly four things. The fourth industrial revolution, the main message there is, it is a reality for every country, every society in the region, be it the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Morocco. The imperative is to be on the front foot around shaping the outcome of that context, making sure that net there is a positive impact on a given society, that it is human-centered, that it makes sense for Saudi Arabia, it makes sense for the Emirates, it makes sense for Morocco, etc. But the main message there is it concerns everyone, and everyone in this region should think about what that means. And we're working on that through, of course, this summit here, and also working a lot with startups, working a lot with policymakers, making sure that the policy environment here is prepared for the fourth industrial revolution. Number one. Number two, what Saadia talked about are new models of economic thinking, or new models for economic and societal systems. Well, we see a lot of reforms in different countries of the region. Well, I see many faces that we've had interviews with, and we've talked about it for a while here now. But as you know now, more is at stake. More countries are pursuing quite ambitious reforms. Well, how do you do that with a future-oriented mindset? How do you do that so that the decisions you're making that are big and strategic will make you competitive still 10, 20 years down the line? And we now live in a very interconnected world. So how do you make sure that you're competitive not only vis-a-vis your neighbors, but you're also competitive vis-a-vis emerging markets elsewhere in the world? Number three, regional commons. One of my colleagues mentioned it as well. Nature, environment. It's not top of mind. If you open a paper, this is something that you don't read much about in the region, arguably because it's overshadowed by other more urgent issues that we talk about here. But I would argue that for the first time we're seeing the state of the environment in the Middle East region affecting the daily lives of people. We've seen it with the water crisis in Basra recently, and how it affected even the elections, you could argue. We saw it in Iran before. We look at the ecosystem of the Mediterranean basin and how that affects economies like Egypt, Algeria, etc., etc. And there is an opportunity now to look at how does the region actually look at the regional commons and the environment specifically. And the final point is the overall geopolitical picture in the region, where again, how can we make sure that some of these trans-border issues, like the humanitarian crisis that we're seeing around the world, what are the opportunities for cooperation in a region that is changing quite rapidly, is something that we're working on through providing our platform for dialogue, because we believe that through this period of change, we need to make sure that some of these issues are not neglected.
Thanks, Mirek. Well, happy to take questions. We have a few minutes. Can I have a show of hands? Gentleman here. Who else would like to ask a question? We'll take a few at a time. Can we get a microphone to this gentleman here, and we'll move the microphone over there. Anybody else? Okay, so what's your question?
Okay.
Please, could you remind us your name and where you're from as well?
Saud Al-Anazi, Al-Jarida newspaper in Kuwait. I wonder about the assessment, and how do you assess the progress from year to year? Like we've been here last year. What really have been implemented of the ideas that were discussed last year? And my second question, which is related also to it, how much influence politicians have on progress of this forum from year to year or through the years since 2008?
Thank you, sir. And let's just take this question here. Anybody else want to stick their hand up?
Thank you. Actually, Mr. Saud take part of my question, but it's okay. My name is Mohammed Al-Bishi. I'm from Al-Saadia newspaper from Saudi Arabia. From your opinion, who's useful, such as this meeting or summit, the governor, policy makers, or the business sector? Who's make more useful from this, such as this summit?
Who is this summit aimed at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stephan, I think you're top candidate to start this one.
Yes, with pleasure, sir. It's a really important question you ask, and it goes back to the point that I made. Why is it important that we actually create a space where experts that are frankly very busy in their day job, right? So these are people who are gathering here who are stepping out of their functions, whether it's in business, government, academia, or civil society, to spend 2 days to deliver and think. And this is a meeting that is dedicated to knowledge and thinking. So that is a luxury in today's world. Today's is fast-paced, and to take the time to reflect and come up with new ideas, we posit is an important contribution in the space of policy making and business. We don't often enough take the time to rethink fundamentally the way we do things. We realize, and I think that is the motivation for us to set as a theme for our annual meeting in Davos, this theme of a new phase of globalization, rethinking or reshaping the global architecture. We do need radical new ideas for how the economy works, for how the overall global system works, because we need to make tough choices. There are trade-offs and dilemmas in the way we organize the economy. I mentioned we've made great progress, and you see it in this region, the great benefits of global integration of trade, of economic progress. But Mirek mentioned the importance of the environment. We see it in this region, we see it elsewhere in the world. So can we imagine a different way of working in the economy that that delivers on both of these aspects? And so this is a longer answer to your question, because it's a fundamental point. We need this time to reflect and get together, and then bring these ideas that come out of these deliberations here into the policy making and business decisions. We've actually used this meeting to inform a whole range of activities that the World Economic Forum hosts over the course of the year. Most importantly, actually, a summit alongside the UN General Assembly, the Sustainable Development Impact Summit, where we launch large-scale multi-stakeholder initiatives. I mentioned the Fourth Industrial Revolution for the Earth, which is something that was conceived here and then brought to this Impact Summit. And we want to do the same with ideas about the new global architecture that we'll bring to the discussions in Davos. So the impact comes through carrying the ideas into the spheres of decision making, into the high-level dialogues that we have in other meetings, and then to inspire the different representatives that are here, whether they are in government. We know that the UAE government is very actively engaged and is taking on a lot of the inspirations from the councils here into the government itself. But it's that diffusion of ideas that we're focusing on here.
And Stephan, if in terms of tangible impacts, because we want to see how the world's changing, and everybody's too impatient, and long-term thinking is great, but we want to see results now. There have been a few, right? So if I'm not mistaken, the fourth industrial revolution was first discussed at this meeting, and the cyber center, we've opened up a cyber center in Geneva to tackle this growing global problem. And again, it's one of the outputs from this meeting over the past 1 or 2 years, correct?
Yes, so across the board, we have 38 councils here that are all informing our various initiatives, the discussions on the future of jobs. Maybe Saadia will comment on that as well. So absolutely, it informs our work across the board.
Saadia.
Sure, thank you. Let me take an example from just one council. Last year, our Education, Gender and Work Council, it had a 2-year term, and they came up with really interesting concepts about the future of jobs, helped shape our future of jobs measurement, and really made a call for placing people at the center of the fourth industrial revolution. That led to the creation of 2 initiatives. One focused on closing the skills gap in business with a goal to reach 10 million people by 2020. Including many from this region, and we have already surpassed that goal, and we're still far from 2020. So there's been a huge amount of energy against that. The second piece was a Preparing for the Future of Work country-level initiative, which would bring together the 100 businesses, the 100 top employers in a particular country, along with a cross-ministerial group to set targets on the future of work. And there are to date 5 countries that have signed on, including within the next couple of months one from this region that will be announced. So a lot of very specific progress on skills and jobs, and that's just from one council.
Thank you, Beth. And to answer this gentleman's question, who is this meeting most aimed at, business leaders or politicians? Is there a quick answer to that one?
Well, the quick answer to this is we need both, because the kinds of solutions that we're talking about will not be able to be implemented by just one side, and we're talking about partnerships across sectors, across the government, the private sector, and across thematic areas. So the short answer to this is both, and we're pleased to have representatives from across those.
Well, we have a few more minutes left, so I'm very happy to take more questions before we all go on to our next engagement. So is there anybody else? Yes, sir.
Mustafa from Al Ittihadi newspaper. My question to Mirek. 10 years now hosting United Arab Emirates is hosting this summit. What is the impact of this summit on UAE in general, in particular, and Middle East in general? How they are coping with the results of these meetings during this last decade?
Okay, anyone else? We'll take 2. We can take another one if there's interest. Okay, let's just take that one, and then we'll close.
As I said, the UAE is a window to the world for the region in many ways, because it is the most globally integrated economy, has been of the region. It's been a great collaboration. One concrete thing that is really setting the stage for us here recently, it is the fourth industrial revolution, where, as you know, we have had the discussion around it here. We saw the establishment of a national task force that Minister Gargawi, under the auspices of His Highness Mohammed bin Rashid, established here in the UAE. This is quite exceptional, being able to, in such an agile way, institutionalize a very forward-looking agenda for the country. It's quite exceptional. And of course, we're continuing our work with the UAE on that front. We have had a very fruitful collaboration with them over the past few months around data protocols, something that we did with our San Francisco Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and we continue that collaboration. It's one of the first ones that we did on the fourth industrial revolution in the world.
Watch this space, basically. Okay, well, I think that's a very suitable and fitting place to end. I hope that's given you a good briefing and arisen your curiosity as to what will happen over the next couple of days. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching online. Thank you, my dear and esteemed colleagues. Good luck and have a great meeting.